Morning Light. Numbers chapter 16. Rebellion in the Camp, Part 4. Yesterday we looked at Korah and how a quiet unhappiness with the place Yahweh had given him slowly grew until it became open rebellion. Today we come to two other men who joined that same rebellion, Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab. Yet their complaint was not quite the same as Korah's. Korah wanted the priesthood for himself, but Dathan and Abiram turned their anger in another direction. They turned it straight against Moses and against the way he was leading the people. It is good for us to look closely at these two men because the sickness that was in their hearts can quietly grow in our hearts too, if we are not watchful. After Moses had spoken to Korah, he sent for Dathan and Abiram. This was a kindness. Moses was giving them a chance to come and talk with him, to sit down and reason together. But their answer came back at once, hard and cold. "We will not come up." Those few words tells us everything about the state of their hearts. They were no longer willing even to recognize that Moses had any authority over them. In their minds, the matter was already settled. Moses was the problem and they had decided they would not listen to him any longer. Then they made a shocking accusation. They said, "Is it a small thing that you have brought us up out of the land flowing with milk and honey, to kill us in the wilderness?" Let us stop and ask a simple question. What land were they calling a land flowing with milk and honey? They were speaking of Egypt. Egypt had been the land of their slavery. In Egypt, Israel had groaned under Pharaoh. In Egypt, their baby sons had been thrown into the river. In Egypt, they had cried out under the whip and heavy burden, yet Yahweh heard their crying and came down to save them. And yet now these men spoke about Egypt as though it had been a wonderful home, a beautiful place from which Moses had cruelly and needlessly dragged them away. How could this be? How could the house of bondage suddenly sound like a land of milk and honey? The answer is that their rebellion had changed their memory. Sin has a way of doing this to us. Egypt was beginning to look lovely in their eyes, while Moses, the very servant Yahweh had used to set them free, was beginning to look like their enemy. Their eyes had been turned around and now they saw everything backwards. They went further still. They spoke as though Moses had deceived them from the beginning. Their words really meant this. "You brought us out, promising us something better, but look at us now. We are still wandering in the wilderness. You have not given us what you promised." They said, "You have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, nor given us any inheritance of fields and vineyards." But we must ask again, whose fault was it that Israel had not yet entered Canaan? Was it truly the fault of Moses? It was not Moses at all. Only a short time before this, in the previous chapters, Yahweh had brought Israel right up to the border of the housed land. Joshua and Caleb had stood before the people and begged them to go up and take it, for Yahweh was with them. But the people listened instead to the 10 fearful spies. They refused to trust Yahweh. They wept through the night and they turned back. They themselves had refused the land. The door had been opened and they had shut it with their own hands. And now, standing in the wilderness that their own unbelief had earned, Dathan and Abiram pointed the finger at Moses and blamed him for it. This is how rebellion works within us. First we make a wrong choice. Then we begin to suffer the sorrow that our own choice has brought. And at last, instead of looking honestly into our own hearts, we go searching for someone else to carry the blame. Tomorrow, we will look more closely at how this same danger can rise up in the new creation, and how a brother who once helped us can slowly begin to look like an enemy in our eyes. Prayer. Our Father Yahweh, we come before you this morning with open and honest hearts. Keep us from the sin of Dathan and Abiram, who let their disappointment turn into rebellion and who blamed the servant you had sent to save them. Guard our memory, Father, that we may never call our old bondage beautiful and never call our former darkness sweet. When the journey becomes hard, help us to remember that you are the one who brought us out and that your hand has never let us go. Teach us to look honestly at our own choices instead of pointing at others. When our hearts grow bitter, search us and lead us back to the place of trust. We ask this in the name of your Son, our Master Christ. Amen.